It's not about you. It's not about your product. It's not about your business. It's about your users and putting them first and positioning everything in a way that communicates value and understanding and empathy with them.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, here we go. Oh man, I'm so excited for today's conversation, and I can't wait to introduce our guest today. Well, who is it, Casey? Who is he? Well, let me tell you. Pull up a seat, grab your Dunks or Starbucks. I've got mine. I am pre-gamed, and you got to lock in for this conversation. He is a serial marketing leader, a thought leader to marketing leaders, GTM, demand gen, brand, you name it. He's all about scaling, and he's actually driven 8.5x ARR growth recently. Recognized ADP list as a top 50 marketing mentor. Let's go. Let's get mentored today. Former VP of Marketing, CopyLeaks, Fractional Marketing Leader to High Growth Saas B2B. Eric Bogard, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Casey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I hope I live up to that introduction. I don't know.
I know it's all downhill from there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So they say.
Well, in order to ask you this first question, I got to grab my giant foam finger here. So, Eric, go ahead and answer me. What is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
Yeah, no, I love that. And my foam hand is kind of up away. I'll bring
Nice.
it next time. But, the thing that I see most frequently is most founders and early stage marketers thinking that they have a marketing problem. Oh, pipeline's not coming in. We need to, really prove to our board that we're growing, that we have a proof of concept here. But in reality, they have an understanding problem. And what I mean by that is not having kind of a deep, intimate knowledge of the ICPs that they're looking to sell into.
Yeah, an understanding problem. They just don't know, right? We just don't know. It's like and then we hallucinate worse than AI does in all of our marketing campaigns because we don't actually know who we're talking to.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the way that I view it, and I'm sure there's other viewpoints out there, and that's great, right? Let's kind of put everything out there, is that, I view marketing as a hub and spoke type model. And what I mean by that, the hub is who you're selling into, having an intimate knowledge around who they are, the problems that they have, how they search for solutions to their problems, what their motivations are, other solutions that they're considering, and things of that nature. And everything else that you do within marketing points to that. Your demand gen programs point into that, right? Your go-to-market strategy and verticals that you're focusing points into that. Your field strategy, if that's such a thing for your organization, points into that. All of the messaging that you're crafting points into that, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately, if you're not spending, the resources at the front end, understanding that ICP, crafting the right message, the right value proposition, everything else may or may not work. I don't know, but it's almost diminished returns. You want to ensure that you have that foundation in place so that all of the downstream considerations are given the best chance to succeed.
Man, dude, powerful. Why do you suppose? I feel like this is talked about to the point where we just kind of take it for granted, but we don't actually do it.
We don't do it. Yeah, it's a great question. Fundamentally, why? Right. I could probably speculate that there's forward pressure to show growth, right? You're operating on a quarterly cadence at that, right? And so, hey, we brought on this quote marketer leader. We need to show return. We need to show return, right? And I get that. I certainly get the pressures there. But at the end of the day, you want to do this right. You want to ensure that there's a foundation in place that you could ultimately scale in a predictable manner off of. And this is fundamental to that. And so ultimately, I speak with a lot of, early founders, early to marketers in their career. And I continually kind of, hound sand on this concept. And look, again, a founder or board's going to want results. And I get that. So it's, how do we walk and chew gum at the same time? How do we ensure that we are setting that foundation that I'm speaking about? And I'm sure everybody will get tired about me saying, but also while getting some quick wins and success in the sales so that you could get kind of that immediate pressure off of your plate and focus and dedicate the time on those foundational considerations.
Those wise words. Any recommendations on alleviating that immediate pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I face it. I speak with people again all the time that face it. And look, every business is different. Every market's different. Every value proposition's different. But what I have found is leaning into a relatively simple Google Ads campaign where you're identifying intent-based keywords and actions that align with your brand or your property or your business and setting that up quick and dirty, right? That's to me the elegance of a properly set up Google search campaign that, people are leaning in Google because they're looking for solutions to their problems. And if you're able to surface your brand in a way that speaks to them, that resonates with them, you're able in theory to convert them. Again, getting some of those early wins and successes in your cap, so to speak, that feather in the cap, while buying you time to focus on these more fundamental type considerations that we're talking about here today.
Okay. Like that, like you said, a properly set up Google search campaign, you're addressing a need, can be a great low hanging fruit.
Correct.
You might need some negative keywords, maybe just a little bit of quick wins in there, buys you the time to do the due diligence. I mean, short of cracking their brain open like an egg, how do you get this information out of your ideal buyer?
So there's a multitude of different ways to approach this, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes in-house, there's going to be some of that knowledge base, right? Oftentimes people that you work with, other executives, may have been on that other side, right? So pick their brain, take advantage of that. Be able to understand what it was like a day in their shoes, so to speak. Beyond just that, there's speaking with the customer, right? Which is a lost art in my opinion. Surveying is a great other example, right? With surveying, you're getting that quant. With speaking, you're getting that qualitative to kind of color in shades of gray, so to speak. You layer that in with different signals that you're seeing on your website and other kind of, metrics and heat maps and things of that nature. Now you're starting to get kind of a full picture of things. And for me personally, I always have found attending events, that we're sponsoring or just showing up to an adjacent event to be super helpful because you're forced into an environment where your ICP lives and thrives. And all it takes is a simple greeting to start to germinate conversations that, will start to give you the insights that you ultimately need to understand this ICP, who they are, challenges, pain points, motivations, media that they consume and things of that nature to start to color in those gaps that you may have, or that may exist within the enterprise at that.
Right. And I definitely see the idea of the layer, right? Like, it's not like you have a silver bullet that just discovers all the information you need. And you need to layer it on top because you might have errors here and there, but you also may have some gaps. So you just need to think of a layered approach to discovering this. Is there a go-to first? Like how do you approach, like you're starting a new client or a new, company, you're head of marketing tomorrow. Where are you looking to start? Let's say you've already magically got that, you've bought yourself some time, you let off the immediate pressure. Where are you starting to investigate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on a multitude of factors. But I would probably start, and you may be familiar with this thing called AI, like maybe it rings a bell,
Is that a sports drink? Yeah. Tell me. What is that?
It could be. Maybe you and I should talk offline and potentially bring this to market.
Could you imagine the search confusion when people search for AI and they get a sports drink?
Hey, there's upside potentially, right? I don't know.
There is, right? You just steal all the search traffic.
But yeah, look, that's a great starting point, right? You could get a full competitive audit and analyses in, I don't know, a couple minutes, right? Just depending on the type of prompt engineering that you're leaning into. as a really good starting point. Who are the competitors? What's their value proposition? Who are they targeting? What is the messaging, and how does that suggest that they're trying to resonate to that given audience? And then you can do that really quick and dirty while you're considering the other things that I just shared that may take a little bit of a longer lead time to build out.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have found valuable, and this is kind of a longer term endeavor, but it keeps you honest long term, is maybe building out and establishing an advisory board, right? To validate new ideas or validate new concepts, or to give feedback around a new offering that you intend to introduce, right? These are people that you handpick, right? Definitely from your target audience. And ultimately, you're able to lean in them for their expertise. Because at the end of the day, and I see this go wrong more frequently than not, it's not about you. It's not about your product. It's not about your business. It's about your users and putting them first and positioning everything in a way that communicates value and understanding and empathy with them.
Yeah, I love that, man. I feel like that is like soundbite heaven right there, clipping the crap out of that thing.
Please,
But it's true though. It's not about you. Why do we get confused about that? Why do we think it is about us?
It's not about us. And it's so funny, like I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but like one of the trends that I wanted to share that I'm seeing and hearing and just picking up myself is, again, AI's all over the place. You hear it here and there, and it could, solve world peace and things of that nature. But I really think there's a need and a gap around returning to empathy in the basics, right? And, data and empathy are not opposites, and understanding your user is not against that. It really allows you to have a more 360-degree view of the user, take an empathetic approach and make it about them, not about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to circle back around to the advisory board. How do you make that valuable for both the company and for the members of the advisory board? I've definitely seen a lot of folks do that wrong, or do it where it's like a nice to have, but it doesn't quite capture what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think your experience is a fairly common one. And look, I haven't necessarily cracked that code fully myself either. Oftentimes advisory board is kicked around, in meetings and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what really is that? And what are we trying to solve for? And how do we keep them engaged, right? Because it's not necessarily a set it and forget it, though maybe, it has its time and place for set it and forget it. But ultimately, I'm a big advocate with advisory boards, just marketing as a whole, drilling down into the why, 5, 6, 7 layers of why. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? And I think it's no different with an advisory board, right? That ultimately understanding, why do we want one? What are we trying to do with it? What are some of the challenges we're trying to address? So I think it's, an intentional approach where you're front loading that before you're even, reaching out to anybody who you may want on that advisory board, but also understand kind of, what are the different cross-functional leaders that may derive some sort of value from it. Obviously, there's marketing value, product value, sales, CS, even engineering, right?
Yeah.
Being able to kind of lay out that vision and then build it accordingly with the right people, with the right honoraria in place, if that's the avenue that you're going, but also, again, to keep them engaged, right? This isn't, in theory, a one-time wonder type situation, but we're going to lean on them every month, let's say, for example, right? For ongoing advisory and whatnot, to be able to nurture them just like any other B2B nurture campaign, keep them engaged, keep them, ready for the next dialogue and conversation, and be able to have that agenda so that it's a productive use of everybody's time.
Yeah, I gotta imagine it builds over time too. The value of it isn't necessarily in the first meeting, but it may be, but it's also the consistent programmatic approach to asking these questions.
I love that. Yeah, 100%. And maybe, right, you're going to have a lot of your answers addressed on the first dialogue or first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But, ultimately, in my experience, that initial meeting is just kind of a download, if you will, and discovery process for both parties, right? And then once you start to have that in place, then it's like, all right, here's the set of things that we as an organization are trying to understand or address. Now let's kind of lean into that advisor or advisory plural in terms of addressing some of that.
It seems like a no-brainer. Everyone's got to have it, but there's that time commitment to, right?
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
you don't want to start it and drop it.
You don't want to stop and drop it. And look, that you hear about that frequently. I've been on the end of that as well, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we're spending the resources, we see and understand the value, but we sort of don't plan it out long term, right? And then it sort of like organically fizzles and dissolves. And okay, there may have been value there, but what could we have done a little bit different, for example, to keep a finger on the
Mm.
pulse and have that as a resource in our back pocket when introducing a new product, a new positioning statement, a new whatever, it doesn't matter.
When we are creating new, are there any particular mistakes that people tend to make?
Yeah, no, I think it goes back fundamentally to this conversation. It's two things.
Full circle.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily having a 360-degree view of the ICP and making it about us, not the end user. And
Right.
one thing I say so frequently, and people get a kick out of this, particularly with early stage organizations, maybe seed round, Series A, is featureitis. Let's include every single feature of our product offering on our website.
Hmm.
With all due respect, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit.
Nobody cares.
Yeah. Nobody gives.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe the engineering team or a founder wants that. But at the end of the day, that goes back to what we've been talking about, where that is the type of positioning for us versus the end user. And you're missing the opportunity to bridge perhaps a feature to a value proposition that speaks to them and resonates with them. Right. And so, Casey, even going back to, what we talked about maybe 10 minutes ago,
Hmm.
that like hub and spoke model that I've been talking about, I view product marketing as one of the early and critical hires to build that out. That is what a product marketer does, right? They know
Yeah.
your audience. They're able to connect the bridge, so to speak, between the product and engineering team and the audience and what you're bringing out to market. And they're the type of person that are going to help address a lot of what we've been talking about and give clarity where perhaps it's a muddy water type situation, right? And then even help to inform the go-to-market strategy, the different tactics and channels to lean into
Mm.
to bring that to market.
Yeah. Man, why do we break product out? I wonder because then we end up where it if you don't have it in the title, it's just almost like a separate thing, and it's not part of your concern. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen that, where you're either product marketing or you're not. And if you're not, you have other thoughts and feelings, but you're not really thinking about bridging that gap.
Yeah. It's such a great question. I don't know. And I'll share kind of like some of my observations. I'm curious,
Yeah.
whether you've seen that as well, or maybe, you've heard something different, but I don't think, the type of organizations that we're talking about really understand at its crux what product marketing is.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Yeah. And I think one thing that adds to the challenge, when you think of a demand gen role, it's pretty black and white. There's a pretty shared definition what that is, right?
Yeah,
There's a
totally.
pretty shared definition around content creation and content manager. Obviously, the mediums may be different, the forums may be different, but net, it's the same. Same with PR, right? With
Sure.
product marketing, there's so much variance in terms of how organizations and leaders view it, right? Is it just something that you're going to launch something out in market and they formulate that? Sure, right? Is it, hey, leaning into the audience and leveraging, their insights, their wants, their needs, their desires to help to address the product roadmap? Yeah, maybe in certain organizations. And so it really depends. And for me, for what it's worth, right, I view it as a book-ended discipline, essentially capturing
Bookend.
what I just said, both of those. It's front-loaded, how you understand the end user better than anybody else, market dynamics, competitive dynamics, and leveraging all of that insight to help the product team formulate a roadmap and a vision for product innovation. And the other bookend, and I'm obviously oversimplifying all of this, but the other bookend is, okay, that amazing feature or functionality is about to release. Who's it for? What is the value proposition and how we're messaging it? How we're working cross-functionally with the rest of the commercial team to bring it to market? What that entails from a acquisition standpoint? What that entails from a CS standpoint and promoting that, right? And upselling existing clients, right? So that's my definition. And that's my thesis around why product marketing, sort of this like nebulous concept that a lot of organizations just have difficulty getting their heads around.
Yeah, it's so nebulous, right? But what a contrast with all those other roles where
Yeah.
it's kind of baked in. It, instructions are already attached and batteries included,
Correct. And I'm curious, like, again, this goes back to my asking why a million times, but I wonder why that is. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's what I experienced too. I experienced growing up through mostly demand pathways,
Yeah.
and I mean, there was product people, but the idea of product marketing was almost like a luxury in a marketing department. It wasn't like a requirement. It was like if your VP got extra funding somehow, and you didn't, maybe you just needed someone else on the staff to communicate product updates. Then they labeled it, but it was never this deep understanding of the user to
Correct.
feed product that information.
And
Yeah.
I'm also seeing perhaps more than I have in the past, though maybe because my aperture is a bit wider, this role now reporting with more frequency into product.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one can make a compelling argument for it to live there, but maybe I'm old school. For me, fundamentally, it's a marketing function, and therefore sits most naturally within the marketing organization and really kind of abides by that T-shaped requirement for a marketing leader. That's a big part of it, spanning, across different functions and roles. It's lends itself to the messaging, to growth, which fundamentally are marketing disciplines.
Where do you see this going? What excites you about the future? What's coming around the bend?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, look, it's AI, and I'm not going to beat that dead horse, right? I want to give folks something that's
Wait, the sports drink again? What?
Now I'm great.
I know. Yeah. AI now engraved.
But I think, one of the things that I mentioned a few moments ago, it's the return to empathy in the basics, right?
Yeah.
AI can't solve everything, right? It's not going to. It requires, a hybrid of perhaps data, that qualitative understanding and empathy. And they're not opposites. They're aligned, and it gives you a 360-degree view of your ICP, your market, your opportunity, your whatever. It doesn't matter. So I think that's a big one. I think another thing to keep with the AI bandwagon is, it's an amplifier. It's not a replacement.
An amplifier, not a replacement.
Yeah. So in my opinion, the marketers who win and will win know how to lean on AI to enhance creativity, enhance output, enhance insight into their markets, support personalization, but still fundamentally have to know the basics of marketing. An analogy which I really like, it's imperfect, but it's good enough perhaps, is a calculator. In order to use a calculator, you have to have a basic understanding of arithmetic. Otherwise, like me trying to play around with a scientific calculator, I don't know what a sin, a cosine, all this stuff. I'm just tapping buttons and nothing happens, right?
Right.
However, if you have that understanding of arithmetic or more advanced arithmetic, you're able to lean on it and it accelerates what you're able to do, right?
Mm.
And to me, AI is the same thing. To have that basic marketing foundation, understanding, and then with it, it accelerates your impact. It accelerates outcomes, right? And makes you fundamentally better at what it is that you're able to do as a marketer.
It's probably not a good idea then to just outsource everything. I feel like that's the direction it's headed,
Yeah,
but we're already seeing initial results of it with, more spam coming through, and it's not better.
it's not bold.
AI is not creating a better sales email. It's arguably worse and still bad and still a bad channel and still a bad method. And yeah, so it's like classic, you just given marketing automation and now you're going to screw more things up with it. Hey, now you have AI, you're going to screw more things up with it.
Yeah, look, I'm so glad you're sharing that because, to me, I felt the same way and have been feeling the same way.
Yeah.
I've been speaking with, founders and organizations and, they're looking to build out a marketing organization of one where the VP of marketing, for those listening at home, I'm doing the air quotes, you're both a strategist and a tactician. Oh,
Yeah.
and you're going to lean heavily on AI to automate and all whatever buzzword adjective you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand the need to go lean and establish a proof of concept and things of that nature, but you're not going to have one person whose superpower is both on the strategic and tactical. Let me put that out there, right? Let me say
Yeah.
that again. You're not going to find one person who's that strategist and that roll up the sleeves person to implement the tactical considerations. Not going to happen. Okay. So fundamentally then, okay, what does a more modern and, marketing organization look like? Well, I think it's leaner, unquestionably, but I still think going back to AI as an amplifier, not a replacement, you still need those core functions of a marketing organization, all else being equal,
Right.
content, product marketing, which we've been talking about,
Right.
design, demand gen, et cetera. Then it's a question of, okay, great. We have those basic pieces in place. Where does AI fall into that, right? How do we adopt it across all those different facets? And what ultimately does it do to where in the past, maybe it takes 3 people, maybe now it just takes one person managing that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's exciting, man. Really, it's exciting to think about
Yeah,
the kind of places we can take this.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, you had the industrial revolution, then personal computing and the internet. I think this is the next big thing. And,
Yeah.
obviously AI is getting a ton of attention, but I don't think from a macro standpoint, it's getting that type of attention. It's going to be a majorly disruptive technology in ways that maybe we're not thinking about.
Mm. Man, my next question for you really is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know these things? Talk to me about like take me back in time, little you days. Did you know you were going to be a marketing leader, a thought leader, teaching other marketers these things? What was it like?
Well, you're being very generous with thought leadership, so thank you for that.
My job. Yeah, no problem.
It's a great question. I find myself to be naturally curious. I've always been really curious. And eons ago, I stumbled upon this thing called Wikipedia.
Okay.
And I was like, holy cow, what is this? And I spent hours a day, weeks, years, just going through and clicking through and seeing where my click path would take me, just learning about just random things, not even marketing related, just like geographic, historical, like whatever, right? And, I've always been kind of a sponge for information and asking
Yeah.
why and asking why. And I think as it pertains to, professional setting, it's no different. I like to be able to take the same kind of playbook and apply it in a marketing capacity. Just because it's always been done X way doesn't mean it's the right way. What if we were to do
Right.
this? What if we were to do that? But at the end of the day, I'm still a pragmatist, right? And I think that's
Right.
reflected in understanding your market and your ICP. Not trying to be disruptive there, right? There are still fundamentals of it that work to this day in a post AI world. And I think, now with the acceleration of technology, AI, et cetera, it forces one's hand in marketing, but cross-functionally to embody lifelong learning. And
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
don't, right, you may be left behind.
You most certainly will be left behind, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
you said it more bluntly than me, but yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Not really on purpose either, just as a matter of design. That's just what happens if you don't keep pushing, keep learning.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. And look, there's, obviously a lot of disruption that happens with any new major technological innovation, but also
for sure.
opportunity and upside. So which camp do you want to fall into?
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly not the one that has no clue what's going on and is lagging behind. Like, put me in the camp of the people that are at least trying to put stuff together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Figure it out. We're all learning together, right? In real time. And, that's why I find opportunities like this helpful. I don't know everything, right? We're all trying to learn and support each other at the same time.
And I think it's okay to not know, right? I think, the big flaw of these kind of things is if you pretend like you know everything, I prefer to be a caveman and, you know, maybe I do know more and I probably do, but like, I'll just start with like, I'm not sure. I want to learn from this guy. What can I learn here? And grow. I mean, I think podcasts are a great way for learning new content,
Yes.
like very topical, very now content, not, waterfall cycle, the book comes out and then here's what's working right now. And then literally 4 years from now, it may or may not be the thing.
100%, but you're able to
Yeah.
produce something relatively quickly and easily, right? And
Yeah.
tell me if I'm judging that too swiftly, but yeah,
Yeah.
and then put, thought leadership of today out there that may or may not have a limited shelf life ultimately.
It's almost like everything is a limited shelf,
Yeah.
like it's all like that. And you just, again, staying up with it. Um,
Exactly, exactly. So, that's why, I'm so happy to be here. It's do my little part to help share something that maybe somebody out there wasn't thinking about, or maybe needed a little bit of motivation to kind of explore a little bit further, right? And I'm
mm,
sure people will pay it back to me. People pay it back
for sure.
every single day.
For sure. For sure. And that's the benefit of a community as well
That's
is
right.
investing in each other, you know?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on that note, yeah, what's your take on community? What's your take on, the connected market community? I know you had that event back in April. What's your take, in this community and just community in general?
Yeah, no, I think, now it's needed more than ever, truth be told. I really feel that way. I don't want to say marketing was in a rut, pre-ChatGPT in November 2022, but it felt kind of stale and stagnant a little bit. And that's just my own opinion, right? Um, and so, when you're in that type of environment or ecosystem, it becomes pretty formulaic, right?
Yeah, just like going through the motions kind of thing.
Correct. And
Yeah.
here's your playbook, right? Just go
Yeah.
heart rate, follow that.
Yeah. Execute the play.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're not there anymore. The playbook is still yet to be written. And what's been written, the ink is still wet, right? It's not yet dry. So how do we support each other, share leadership, share examples of what worked? And there's just as much value in sharing what hasn't worked, right? To be able, yeah, share ideas and bring it to our own respective teams and organizations as at a minimum food for thought. And at a maximum, maybe we learn something and we actually want to test the waters with one of those concepts, right? And so
Mhm.
I would say as an aggregate, we're all working together in the marketing community to build out that playbook. And, the ink at some point will dry, though, who knows, right? And with the next major innovation, AI or not AI, it'll be a rewind and hit play type cycle where, okay, new thought leaders will come to the plate, understand kind of market dynamics and be there to kind of put forward a voice, a framework, a way to think about things that maybe are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Different's
Yeah.
good. Different's good.
Different is good. Different is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the note of different, I have a bit of a hypothetical question for you next.
Let's do
Are
it.
you ready for this?
I'm ready for it. Rolling up the sleeves here.
All right, let's do this. You see, I may or may not have a time machine over here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So let's say you're, customer event, you're doing a little, maybe a board, a little round table in the Boston area. You come up north, we get some beer. There's a time machine. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. And we use this time machine, but it's a particular kind of time machine where you get to go back and meet yourself a couple days, about 4 days after getting that degree, that shiny new marketing, PR, psych, super mega combo degree, right? What do you tell that Eric? You get a chance to have a conversation with yourself. What do you tell yourself?
I love the question. Thank you. So I'm entering in the time machine, hitting the right buttons, right? And now I'm back there.
Yeah.
And I recall when I graduated, and, for those who are curious enough, you can find me on LinkedIn to understand the when and the where. But, I was sort of rudderless. And that created a certain degree of anxiety. I went to college, did well, right? And, Eric back then thought that would open up all these different doors and opportunities. And it didn't.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, that's okay. It's okay to not know what you do or want to do. It's okay going in with a big funnel, as it were, around what the opportunity looks like, right? You're bigger than just for what it is that you do for work, right? It's part of your identity, but it's not your full identity. And so at the time, I struggled to help, to address some of these questions that I'm raising and understand what is it that I want to do. And I sort of forced my hand, to be honest. And, I ended up at a PR agency, quickly learning that PR is not for me. And that's okay, right? Again, failing forward type situation. But I still didn't know what it is, right, that I wanted to do. And that created tension and anxiety. And so fast forward a couple years, somebody saw something in me. And they took a little bit of a risk and put me in a manager position where I was overseeing, a small team and ultimately responsible for demand and growth. And I liked it. I found my footing. And I stumbled into that. It wasn't intentional. It was fortuitous. And for me, the lesson is don't force things. Things will happen as they're supposed to. It may not be obvious the next day, a week thereafter, a month or a year thereafter. But in hindsight, when you reflect back, and reflection is critically important, you'll see how and why the dots connected. It's almost like a three-dimensional chessboard. How they connected, why they connected, and the timing of when they connected. And that, for me, was the start of my marketing career as far as I'm concerned, and being able to say, you know what, I finally found it. Now I'm going to be a little bit more intentional, less anxiety driven around what it is that I see myself doing and how I kind of evolve as a, in a professional capacity, but also in a personal one as well, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. Man, the idea, I'm all about intention and I'm trying to get more and more intentional, but it's great. It almost take a deep breath, because you can try to be intentional, but sometimes the word fortuitous, that was great. Just sometimes it is just putting yourself in situations where maybe those things can happen and you're not even aware. You can't even be intentional about it because you don't even know what is around the corner, but you're putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you need to give yourself the levity and the room to think about that and reflect that. And look, my best aha moment happened, it's cliched at that, in the shower, right? You're,
Right.
you're just absent of thought by design, and you're giving yourself separation from that fire hose, whatever that fire hose is, and it'll just come to you, right?
Yeah.
And, I think that there's a reason why that type of environment fosters innovative thought, right? And so I'm a firm believer, and I tell this to my team all the time. Always find time in the course of a week to take a step back from that fire hose. Reflect, be grateful, understand what worked, what didn't, but lean on that time, that opportunity to think big picture and give yourself space to not think, because thought will come to you.
Man,
Yeah,
powerful. Well, do you think younger you would listen to you?
absolutely not.
Of course. Of course.
Absolutely. No, you think I'm crazy, and I get it.
It's like, get out of here, crazy guy. You're like, no, seriously, listen to me.
Younger me may call the police on older me.
I feel like that's a t-shirt in the making, right? Well, sweet man. Before we go, I just wanted to pick your brain because I know beforehand we just kind of hit this topic and just the idea of travel. And you and I had talked a little bit about travel just being a passion for the two of us. And I mean, what was the number? You have hit so many countries
Yeah.
in your travels.
Yeah, look, I'm really fortunate to have that opportunity to,
Yeah.
experience a way of living outside of my own. And,
Yeah.
to bring it back around the theme of the conversation today, I really enjoy travel because it takes me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It allows me to understand different cultures and different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
It allows me to understand, different cuisines and what resonates with people and what doesn't. We have a very kind of ethnocentric view here. And so when you take kind of that framework, if you will, and apply it to marketing, it's no different. It's getting out of your comfort zone, understanding who it is that you're trying to market to or sell to or influence to, whatever it is. And the way to do that is by shared experiences, by understanding them and not assuming and not making it about you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I really kind of get my kicks out on travel. And, again, I've been very fortunate, and, I hope to be fortunate in the future, being able to, visit places that have been on the radar screen for quite a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, do you have a favorite crazy story from, one of these wild countries that's off the beaten path? How do you pick one story? But
There's so many stories.
I know. You need a podcast. You need like a travel pod.
Yeah. I recall, coming close to missing trains, where the next one would be 24 or 48 hours later, and running
Oh crap.
on board it with a 60-pound suitcase on my back. I recall being by myself in Russia, of all places, everything that's happening there. And, you look different, you sound different, you're by yourself. Yeah. That really, got my attention in a positive way, the most positive of ways, ultimately. But again, for me, the core motivation is just being able to listen and understand people and experience different ways of life.
And people have those little first world issues when,
Oh, yeah.
oh shoot, the thing is closed or Wi-Fi is not working, but missing a train there, you kind of puts you in perspective for, there's more serious things that can happen. And
Right.
man, this is no big deal. I got this,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, that it puts things into perspective. I mean, Russia's an example, but there's many other countries you cannot travel to anymore that I've been at, right? Just given geopolitical reasons, et cetera.
Sure.
And, I think about that, just the people that I've met and experienced, and it's like, oh, I'm complaining my internet's slow today or what have you. And for them, arguably, sometimes it's a matter of life and death. It really puts things into perspective and, forces my hand to be grateful for what I do have.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, there's some great food out there. You gotta get beyond the cheeseburger, you know? There's some wild, wild stuff. Do you
Absolutely.
any surprise foods that stand out for you?
I would say the biggest eye opener, and this was more because I was approaching it from a position of ignorance more than anything else,
Sure.
is Burmese food. It's, to oversimplify it, it's a little bit of Indian here, a little bit of Thai here, a little bit of indigenous there. And, I would say, ignorance because there's really not a population here in New York. Yeah, I know there's one out in San Francisco, but, had the opportunity to travel there and, just didn't know all that much, to be perfectly honest. It's like, whoa, this is really, really good. And, still to this day, there's a dearth of restaurants here. So you want to experience the cuisine, you're cooking it. And so I picked up cookbooks and, I tested my capability. Some dishes come out better than others, but yeah, that's now
Sure.
how I experience it.
Yeah, wow. If this episode doesn't get people thinking about booking their next trip and
Yeah.
and going somewhere interesting for lunch, then I don't know what will.
I was gonna
But,
say, I'm getting hungry. You're really working to get the stomach going.
yeah, right? Yeah, yeah. Um, favorite food from all your travels? And then I'll let the defense rest.
You've asked so many good questions. This is the most challenging one because it's hard to
I
pick
I know.
just one.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Honestly, I can't answer it. I would say, if I had, if my arm was being twisted in Burmese cuisine, there's a thing called tea leaf salad. And TEA, like what you or I would drink, they're, to my understanding, the only culture that eats tea as well. So it's a fermented product. It's green. It's kind of sludgy. And you mix it with different vegetables, some lime juice, fish sauce, etc., some crunchies thrown in for textural difference. Wow. Just like the first bite, it was eye-opening. It was life transformative. It really was.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was. And for those listening, you could probably buy a kit online or something like that, or maybe pop into a restaurant if you're on the West Coast. I don't know. But really, it just like, I think to me, summarize up the entire lived experience of what Burma was like or Myanmar when we visited.
Man. All right. Well, I've harassed you enough about all these amazing foods. Hey, where can people reach out if they want to connect? Folks from the community, other listeners and audience, where do you want them to go? How do you want them to do it?
Yeah, look, I love it. And I love talking shop. So if anybody, wants to follow up on anything, maybe disagree on certain fronts, I'm all for that
Ooh,
as well,
yeah.
right? Or just like reach out, say hi. Probably the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. My name is Eric, ERIC, Bogard, Bogard. So you can find me there. But again, I always love talking shop. I'm on a bunch of different mentoring networks, like you mentioned, ADP list included. So I was happy to connect there as well.
Awesome. Man, dude, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
here.
you. This was
I
great.
feel like we have traveled the world, but also really hit some core things around what we need to do to really truly understand what it's an understanding problem, not a marketing problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks, Eric, man. Thanks for coming on here.
Thank you. And to me, I think the common theme, it's about people, what we've talked
Yeah,
about today,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's about knowing who you're marketing to. It's the travel component to understand people, understand different perspectives. Marketing is a people endeavor. It's not a product endeavor.
100%. A people endeavor, not a product. Man, you just classic. You were just soundbite heaven. Sometimes you get a podcast, and you're like, oh, what are we going to clip? We're going to have to clip like a word from over here and a word from over there. I don't mean, not even sure which one we go with. We might have to go with all of them because there's just so many. So
Know your audience, right?
if you learned something out there, and I know you did, because I have two pages of notes over here, front and back. Then share this episode with like one person, 3 people, 9,000 would be cool. But even one person who needs to hear this, who is missing the mark. They think it's a marketing problem. It's an understanding the people problem. Maybe it's about launching an advisory board or any of these other things that we talked about. The idea of product marketing not being so isolated. Man, so many goodies in this thing. AI, creativity, all the good stuff. Share this episode with one other person. And with that, Eric, thank you again, sir.
Thank you so much. I had a great time, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been another crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.